Okay, so I do have a quick tidbit of the week. It's going to be short because I want to get to Brian Hill, and I know you guys do too. But I had a cool experience last weekend. I had to go to Oklahoma, of all places in the world. And I met someone in Oklahoma who was very inspiring to me. So I am going to call this tidbit of the week More Like Emmy. And you'll understand why here in a second. More like Emmy. So, you never know where you will draw inspiration. Last weekend, I met an inspirational person and I want to be more like her. Her name is Emmy, and I secretly hope that somehow she will see this broadcast someday. I met Emmy in a restaurant in Oklahoma, and she was my waitress. I've heard many people complain about the service industry lately, how the standards have been lowered and no one wants to work anymore. Well, in that world, Emmy is an anomaly. I watched her leading two trainees in the very best way. She was leading by example, and they were paying attention to everything she was doing and everything she was saying because she had something to offer. As I watched her command multiple tables in a completely packed restaurant, like wall to wall, guys, this restaurant was insane. I was surprised and curious. Seeing people work hard and really care about what they do gets my attention. I don't know about you guys, but it doesn't matter what you're doing, what industry you're in, when people are doing their job well and they care about other people, it makes you pay attention. So it doesn't matter whether you're a national competitor or a waitress. If you're a high performer, there's a reason for it. And I decided I could learn a thing or two from Emmy, and you better believe she got a good tip at the end of the night. So here are some takeaways I gathered from interacting with Emmy that we can all apply in our everyday life. First, quiet confidence. Emmy had a quiet confidence that I find in few people nowadays. I remember a teacher once told me, if you don't believe in yourself, no one will believe in you either. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. Confidence in your abilities and your execution is not something you tell people about, it's just something you do. So, number one is quiet confidence. Number two is competence. Emmy was captivating to watch. She was flying from table to table, making it look so easy, as many people do that are very competent in their trade. If any of you have ever waitressed before, I have, and it's not easy. You will appreciate that it takes a high skill level to keep that constant, never ending to do list going and doing it with a smile. You must be competent in your trade. So, number two is competence. Number three is caring. Emmy learned more about us by making small talk. And guess what? When we went back the next day, she remembered our names. Think about that. She remembered our names. I kid you not. How many of you forget what day of week it is? I do it all the time. Raise your hand. Tell me in the comments. But something as small as remembering someone's name can have a huge impact. And this is one area I want to work on myself. The last thing I want to tell you about Emmy is that she had insane attentiveness. Emmy did something I've rarely seen any waitress do, at least not in recent times, and not like I go out to eat all the time, but she could anticipate our needs. So before I could even utter the words that I needed a drink or a to-go box or a refill or whatever it was, she already had it. Like she read my mind. She was attentive and paid attention, anticipating everything that was needed. And this was the most surprising quality I noticed and the most refreshing. So, think about these traits in your own life. Do you provide value to people in a way that they truly appreciate? Do you care about people and really show it in your everyday life? Do you work to meet the needs of your customers, of your family, of your loved ones in a meaningful way? We can all get better in all kinds of ways, guys. And this waitress from Oklahoma showed me a thing or two. So think about one way that you can be more like Emmy and apply it to your everyday life. Not only will you help others, but you'll lay your head down at night knowing you put more good out into the world. And we could surely use more of that. All right, so I'm going to move on now, and I'm excited to introduce our special guest, Brian Hill from the Complete Combatant. If you want to see possibly the longest list of credentials ever, go to thecompletecombatant.com and click on Brian Hill's bio. It made this intro a little bit hard, so I didn't put all the credentials in there. If you want to see them all, there's a long list of good credentials on thecompletecombatant.com. And also, guys, go back to the August 31st episode. That was like, I think I started these in July of 22. And on August 31st of 22, Brian Hill agreed to come on. And we had a great interview. But there's a great intro there, not of me, but of him talking about his background and experience. And it was a more in-depth story of how he got where he is now. It's a really inspiring story of strength through struggle. Strength through struggle, and it's how it's impacted him and how it's shaped him into the person he is today. So it's really powerful. I encourage you to go back and watch that. And so, without going knee deep in all the credentials, suffice it to say that Brian has an impressive martial arts and coaching background, and now is an accomplished firearms instructor as well. And he's a true student of his craft. He inspires his students to excel through his unique teaching style, his methodical approach, and brings to this conversation decades of valuable teaching experience. So, again, go to his website for all the specifics. But let's welcome back our good friend, Brian Hill. Hey, Brian.
Hey guys, thanks for having me again. It's awesome to be
Yes,
here.
sir. Yeah, welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you decided to come back. So I guess that's a good sign.
You know
I
I'd
didn't
do
scare you
anything for you.
away. Oh, come
Anything.
on. Come on.
It's
Don't make
true.
me blush live on air.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
did I miss anything in the intro, Brian? Is there anything that needs to be said about that?
Yeah, you know what's funny? It's so different to hear how people do intros.
Yeah.
And when I was thinking about it, when you think that's a long list of credentials, you should see everything that's not firearms related on it.
Oh, there's a ton of stuff not firearms
Yeah.
related.
And
Yeah,
but I mean nothing I could even that's just the stuff I decided because I decided to be a student and never stop.
right.
So anything I want to go take a waitressing course from Emmy now.
Hey,
100% I
you should
would.
try it, Brian. Truly, you
Yeah.
should.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
would be horrible, but
we
I
can
would
learn
give it a good try.
from everybody. That's what I love about life. Like, we can
Mhm.
learn stuff everywhere we go. And great people are everywhere if we just take the time to pay attention, I think. All right. So, let's get into the beginning here. So, I gave you guys a clue whenever I titled this about developing presence and emotionless correction. And if any of you have taken any of Brian Hill's classes, especially deliberate coaching, you've heard about emotionless correction, which we're going to go into. But the first thing I want to talk about here is, have you guys shout out in the comments if you've purchased this book yet? It's called The Inner Game of Tennis. Tim Heron referred to it in the last live, I think it was 2 weeks ago when I had him on. I think there's been about 3 or 4 people that have brought this book to my attention, including Active Self-Protection as one of the suggested readings for that instructor cohort. So I went ahead and cracked it open. I'm not even, I'm close to halfway through it maybe, so I still have a lot to learn there. But wow, it's a lot to take in, but it's all really good. So I wanted to pick your brain on a few of the concepts in that book and lead into perhaps the emotionless correction side of it. But in the beginning of the book, they talk a lot about presence and how one can become more present in their shooting and in their training. So and I noticed that there's an overlap between those concepts and what you teach as well. So I thought it might be interesting to go over that. But the two concepts I wanted to specifically talk about are quieting yourself, quieting your mind, I assume is what they're talking about, quieting your mind and trusting yourself. Those two concepts. And so do you believe that those two concepts are key to mastering high performance on any level? And why do you think, or do you think that people struggle with those so much?
Absolutely. This was the first coaching book that I ever read that I can remember as a martial artist. And it taught me, number one, to trust myself. So we'll address that. Uh, Trust is the intuitive mechanism of the brain. It recognizes patterns, it is predictive by nature, and it's very fast. And it can do things we simply can't do through logic. And the problem that I find with most people trying to perform level at a high level is they're trying to do it as a checklist. I do this, and then I quiet my mind and then I shoot. But the real problem is this: you can't quiet your mind because you're not one individual up there. You're a multiplicity. There's many voices in your mind and are all actively shouting at one time, much like a preschool, you know. Pay attention to me, pay attention to me. And
Mhm.
whichever one you do pay attention to is the outcome that you're doing. So the trust part of this is to learn how to program yourself effectively. And that requires experimentation. If we learn the proper process of programming and then we let go and simply trust ourselves, that allows us to perform at a much higher level than we've ever done before. It also lets us excel into failure, which I know is a weird way to say it, but if you're not pressing failure, you're really, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but you've got to see what too much and too little always looks like. And your arousal level is where the voices come from. Am I too excited? Am I underexcited? Am I just right? And we have some really good data that the brain struggles mightily before a task and then it lets go. If it can release, and that's what they're talking about, quieting the mind, and do the action, you become fully present in the moment. There's no longer past or present, our future. It's just doing. And for some people, doing is easier. Like we talked about riding a horse, it is you have to be fully present. You can't be behind or ahead of the horse. You just have to know what the horse is about to do, and that's how our mind is too. And we have to recognize who we are in order to trust ourselves, and we have to have an incredible self-image built up that's realistic relative to the training. There's an acronym called SMART uh, that helps us develop goals. And when we're talking about SMART, the big part of it is that the first thing is it has to be a selfless activity. It's a part of our self-image that we're fully present. It has to be measurable. It has to have some sort of accountability to it. It has to be realistic, and it has to be time sensitive. And that allows us to train with the trust because we're working towards something, and then we're refining ourselves as we go along. And even in self-defense, the only constant we have is ourselves. So trust is a huge part of it. Quieting the mind is releasing the struggle. And I think we don't teach what presence means. We just
Mhm.
simply state it like
Be
mindset.
present.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Be
just say be
present.
present, but I don't feel like
Yeah.
people know what that means. So are there any things that you would say could like help trigger that? Not trigger, but techniques you can
Exactly.
use to
Mm-hmm.
help do, cuz just like anything, don't you have to practice it?
Mm-hmm.
And so how can you start to practice that?
Yeah, if we go back to SMART, if it's going to be specific, it's going to be measurable, attainable, realistic, and time sensitive or timely. We have to have, they're called flow triggers. And maybe flow is not the right word anymore. It's a new science. And we're not really sure what's going on, but we know this actually works for people. And the way to get flow triggers is to set yourself up before you train to be in the right
Oh,
posture. And that means number one is to have a clear goal. What am I doing and why am I doing it? That's the one thing I find incredibly lacking. I asked somebody why they're doing something like, well, I saw so and so do it, and we're all doing it. And I was
yeah.
like, yeah, but why are you doing it? And what do you expect to do? If your brain doesn't know what it's working on, brains are answering machines. We ask them questions and then we relax and they answer it. We've all
Hmm.
done that.
Mhm.
But in training, we think we have to do all these things and we have to get all these things to get better at it. But basically, what you're doing is with a goal, you're asking yourself a question. Can I do this? Can I do it timely? Can I measure what I'm doing? And then the next step of having that clear goal is we step right up to the line and we have to know that we're fully present. And what that really means is either people dwell in the past or the future. So the past sounds like I'll never make the same mistake again. And you're right, you will, because you just visioned it. You've practiced it.
Right.
Now you're
Y
going to step up. You've seen it clearly in your mind what it looked like. And so now it becomes a self fulfilling prophecy and then it becomes a plateau. And
mm,
what's interfering in the plateau is your ego. And please, nobody take that in a bad way. We all have an ego, it's part of who we are. I don't mean it just being egotistical, but in order to improve, we have to sacrifice that portion of our ego and we have to try something that's unique and new
mhm.
because true arrogance is believing we know the way. Um, I've done it with my instructors. They told me, you ought to really try this. And I was like, yeah, sounds great. I pay you a lot of money, but I'm going to do it my own way. And that's arrogance. It's not necessarily a negative thing, but we think we know better. So if until we let go of that portion of us and we try something new, creativity thrives in humility. of trying the
Mm.
new thing, sacrificing it. So having that clear goal and then being present. Now, those that live in the future, it sounds like this. Boy, I hope I don't screw this up.
Mhm.
They're always worried about the outcome. But understand this: creativity thrives in uncertainty. You want that. Every day, you guys do something incredibly dangerous, and it's called driving a car. But you could care less because you've forgotten about it. You're familiar with it. You just don't worry about it anymore. And then you see somebody climbing a mountain or jumping out of an airplane or taking an MMA fight or shooting guns, and you're like, boy, that's really dangerous. But what you're really saying is, I don't know enough about it, so I don't have any control over it. So I'm uncertain, so I should fear that. And that's what living in the future feels like. I just don't know what to do yet. So when
Mhm.
we're saying being present is knowing exactly what to do. And the best way to know what you're doing is the next step is immediate feedback. It's got to feed you. Whatever you're doing, you have to be seeing it in real time. And the problem for most people is they live in the past or the future in the feedback loop. It either happens so far and so late it doesn't affect them, or they never really measure themselves, like they're afraid of timers. And that's I should say that differently, but that is the truth. You just don't want to be measured in that moment, so it becomes hard for you. um
That's
I
accountability, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about this real quick. When we talk about immediate feedback, there's two groups of people. There's the accuracy driven decision maker, and there's the driven decision maker, and they're both equally important. Sometimes you need more information, sometimes you need to do something. And we're pre-proposed neurologically to be one of three things. Some of us are pursuers. When we get angry, we move forward. We can't help it. We see it all the time on videos where they chase people down after an event. That is their positioning of their nervous system. Some of us stand firm. We believe in what we believe. We're going to stand where we're at. We won't back down from it, but we won't pursue it either. And then some of us retreat. You can hear them in conversation. You're right. That's right. I'm sorry. I don't know why I brought that up. They tend to back up. Now, all three of those are really important. You need to be able to pursue, you need to be able to stand, and you also need to be able to retreat. Every military doctrine in the world talks about all three things. The problem is we have two we don't see very well. So, accuracy driven people are always trying to say, I want stillness so that I can see everything. And that's what you're trying to do when you shoot. One of the reasons that people have had such a hard time with a dot that are actually accuracy driven is they can't tell themselves anymore that it's still. Where the iron sights, you couldn't see enough of the target, so you were looking at the sights. You can't recognize vision while you're paying attention to something that's in front of you because there's no panorama vision. So you want stillness. That's what accuracy means. And then those that want speed, they want immediacy. And they're the one tapping their foot right now, going, Brian, could you get to the point? That's how they work, you know? And immediacy is what you want. So you have to know that when it comes to training, when you step on the line, know which one you're strong in, know which one you're weak in, and whatever your training is doing should be buttressing those so that when you get to performance mode, you really work. And that's what immediate feedback is. Uh, you know, if you're good at shooting B8s, then you should be doing something else. If you're really fast on the draw, you should be doing something else. You should
Mhm.
work on things so you get creativity and you thrive. And then
Mhm.
that's the final portion of this presence is being completely challenged relative to your skills. So some people need very little challenge, but just a bit. Some people need a lot. The coach's job is to recognize which category you fall into so that your EQ is well managed on the line and we give you just enough a challenge. Learning is cemented by adrenaline, so it's necessary. Adrenaline gets a bad rep, but it is the chemical precursor to go do something. That's what it really means. It's not aggressive by nature, although we say aggressive people, it wrecks our abilities. What it says is you have to do something now. That's why we
Mhm.
stick it in people's hearts when they stop. It tells the heart you must beat. It calls forth energy. So it cements learning in the real moment. So if you're utterly comfortable on the line, that's no good.
Mhm.
But if you're overwhelmed and you can't even think, you're probably disassociative, so you're not there anymore. So all four of these just continually feed themselves. That's how we get to presence when we step up. Now the next question is how do you do all that? Right?
You can keep going if you want.
Yep. Yep. So preparatory cues. There's a real weird thing in firearms where uh, well, it's not weird. It's a bias that exists,
You can say we're
and it,
weird, Brian. It's okay.
well, yeah, but it's because some of the training is still in the infancy. You know, it's only what
Mm.
4 or 5 decades old,
Mm-hmm.
which is a very short term for a learning progression, and then a lot of it was in mystery and it wasn't available. So you know, it's still very it's trying to work its way forward, but it doesn't know. So it has a lot of cognitive dissonance. And what that means is you can believe something to be absolutely true, but not follow it. So, you know, you can know that if you smoke every day, that you're going to die from it. But then you'll cite how many people haven't died from it and how your uncle
Mm-hmm.
lasted forever. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
dissonance that happens. So, what we say is you got to be prepared, you got to have mindset, you need to be present, but then we don't train people to do that when they come to line. And we know that this happens physically and psychologically, not technically. And that's why the more technical training you get, it doesn't solve all your problems because you know how to do the thing. That's not the problem. What you have to do is prepare yourself for the when and the whys and get all that stuff worked out with your system. So these are 7 cues that I teach in class. You've heard these, but we're going to step up to the line. We're going to be ready always. There are no more cold drills unless you don't practice. There's my dig for the day. All right. Because recency is 72 hours. So if you practice in the last 2 hours, it's a recent skill. It hasn't gone away. It takes about 3 weeks to get, 5 to 10% atrophy. It takes 3 months, you'll drop down to 80% base level. If you don't practice after that, you'll probably end up with the ability to do it at 60 or 70%. Those are rough numbers. So recency matters. So there's no cold drills anymore. There's no anything other than being ready all the time, which is a great way to live, which is back to mindful. If I'm
Mm-hmm.
ready to take action, there's nothing to hold me back. I came to do the thing I want to do. Why don't I do it? You know, you came to a shooting class, always be ready when you step up to the line. But a lot of people try to control the readiness factor because they're procrastinators. So they want accuracy. So they're going to take more time. They're going to ask more questions. They're going to take notes and not actually hear what I say. They're not going to be present on the 3 repetitions of what the drill is. Then they're going to ask how the drill works. Then they're going to say, are we going to shoot it now? Because they're not bad people. They're living in that accuracy mode and they're not ready. And
Mm-hmm.
then the super impatient person doesn't know what we're going to do. They're going to step up to the line and they're going to wing it. They're going to whip the gun out, hope it all works out, and be surprised that the results were suboptimal. So being ready is being present and know that you're always going to go first. It's the opposite of military and law enforcement. This, you have to always volunteer to be first because you chose this. This is your goal. You came here for a reason. Once you do that, you have to visualize what you're about to do, and it has to be behind your eyes. You have to be seeing the dot or the front sight drop in, and then you have to add a kinesthetic visualization, which is either breath or grip, which is one of the two things that people don't do. So if you don't exhale, you have to visualize exhaling. This is in the inner game of tennis. There's weird visualization exercises inside of it. Uh, they would teach on the tennis stroke for people to hum because it taught them
Oh.
to breathe. It's
Mm-hmm.
counterintuitive. So I do it on draw strokes sometimes. I make people hum if they're holding their breath. But
Mm-hmm.
your visualization should be breath or grip. You know, what does the grip feel like? Or what am I about to do? So I'm going to keep my lungs moving. If the lungs move, the mind moves, and then we really do a good job. The freeze is simply this: you've decided you can't decide, so you're going to hold your breath. If you want to get moving, take a breath. We'll get back to that in just a second. You have to quiet the vision. The visual uh, input of nervousness is the eyes scanning rapidly all over the environment. It's called a saccade. Uh, it shows a lot of over arousal for the task, and you don't know what's important. So we have to settle the eyes to the center of the target, but you don't want to stare at it. You want to open up your vision.
Mm-hmm.
In order to know where you are in the universe, you have to open up your vision and not look through the foveal cone, which is detailed vision. It's like staring at your thumbnail, and that's part of the problem that we're having with shooting is uh, the iron sights were rudimentary at best, and we know we're going to look at the target, but we're trying to front sight focus and we're trying to prioritize it, but we have to be able to see the environment more than anything. Driving is the perfect example. Try to drive home and look at a rain spot on your windshield and see how that works out. Or look down the road and then try to peripheral see the front of your hood in there. That's the vision of being quieted. And as defenders, we know to look at the hands, but look at the entirety of the target from top to bottom. Musashi talked about this, the soft gaze, to look through and beyond your target so that you can see everything in its totality. Once you've done that, you got to recognize you're going to struggle like hell. This is what nobody talks about. We all struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I've been on the road for 2 weeks. I haven't given any demos, and I stepped up to the line, and a glorious thing happened. I felt the struggle. I was excited because that's what I do this for, you know. And I had to do all these things and once again and let myself. But I didn't try to stop the struggle. I didn't quiet the voices. I just recognized them for what they are. They are simply echoes in my mind. They are not me.
Yeah.
That voice that talks to you is not you. Your actions, your habits, they perform character. Character performs the tone of your life for the rest of your life. So that voice that talks to you, the less emphasis I give it and the more I let it go, the less power it has over me. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of silencing everything, I just let go of it. I program myself. I'm good to go. I trust. Now I'll just get ready to do it. And after that, you just exhale out. You accept the programming, you exhale out, and then you can't wait to execute because you came to shoot. Shooting's fun. Shooting is good. And then immediately afterwards, you ask yourself, did I see and feel anything? Because what I find is people are not present in that moment. And this is how we get the feedback loop. All right. Was I able to see my sights? If you can't see every target in its clear vision with a dot or a front sight in it, you weren't present. And what I found in shot calling drills is that people tend to say now, and as soon as they say now, they stop recording. And then they wait until it comes back so they can realign it. And then they say now again. So I got to be present for it,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the replay. And when I say presence, I get people to practice this over and over so that they can do it. And it sounds really timely and long, but it's this: you get better and better at it, and then it can be done in a second. And this becomes your walkthrough. And if I'm walking down the street and three guys take notice of me and start to do it, the walkthrough's already started. Uh, a good example of this is the outlaw Josie Wales with the guys on the porch. I don't know if any of you watched the movie. It's an awesome movie, but he totally details why he made the decisions in his walkthrough before he went. And then the one thing he could control, he released to somebody else to control. So that's what the trust is in this. And I think when we talk about presence, it's a very deep subject. And
Yeah.
martial artists have been studying this forever. Whether we're fighting with swords or sticks or with hands or choking each other, uh, it is the hardest thing in the world to wait for a fight and then have to step forward and be present for it. And when we say it's won or lost in a locker room, we don't mean there's some advice or a great speech. What we mean is you modulate yourself effectively so that you can perform well under pressure.
Well, hello, Adam.
Hey, Brian. So, a
Yes, sir.
question for you. Um, so, when I go shoot, especially in competitions or really
Mm-hmm.
after a defensive encounter, I oftentimes don't remember seeing my sights. I'm so present in what I'm doing that I don't remember what the dot's doing. I know I did it, but I don't remember it. Is that, and I had somebody argue this to me recently, that that's a sign of unconscious competence. Is it that, or is it really not being present enough to where you can actually remember?
It's a good question. I think it's two separate things. When we talk about unconscious competence, it's the ability to do task at a level where we don't recognize it. So the replay, being able to call or see the dot afterwards, is the opposite of that, where we actually go into, it's like doing a cognitive interview, where you close your eyes, you put yourself forward, and then you try to see the whole array of targets you just shot. And can you see something of red motion? And if it's a dot, were you able to do it? The other indicator is if you were in competition or in real life and you had to make up a shot, you knew you missed. So you're able to correct in a certain timely amount of time, which would be about 0.3 to 0.5, depending on the distance to it. But you made that decision inside of it. So, yes, unconscious competence has a bit to do with it, but we should not be able to see the dot and it shouldn't be clear. We should see the target with red motion in it. And it was good enough as long as I can close my eyes and say I saw something good enough. And I'm going to tell you, I ask a lot of people what they saw. And much like a very young child, they smile at me like this. And they say nothing. I didn't see anything. And I think that's part of the problem. We saw it in law enforcement that, officer involved shootings. Did you see your front sight? No. But if we can take them back to the event cognitively with an interview and say, all right, what did it smell like? What did it feel like? When you were truly present, what did you see? And they will be able to describe this. So I'd say that while you were very unconsciously competent, you need to try your visualization afterwards a little differently and put yourself as present to the feeling and the array of targets and just watch it as a tape instead of looking for something specific. See what your mind plays back. And if that's good enough, then you're fine. If it's not, you'll know
So
right away.
open it up. So open it up to the vast majority of senses instead of just the visual plane, maybe to the olfactory, to everything else, and then that replays it correctly. Okay, that's been a real curiosity to me, and that's a fantastic answer. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Well, it's a different part of the brain that can replay these things. You know, that's where PTSD comes from, is that we store a traumatic event and then we replay it in real time constantly. So there's no power over it. It constantly crushes us. But that cycle is also available for improvement, that we can replay this. But shooting is primarily vision, which is the primary sense, but the support sense is feel. And most of us don't feel anything while we're shooting, except for speed shooters. They feel it all. They don't see anything, you know. And then the idea of smell and sound allows us to be more present in it, you know. Taste doesn't really work, but you know, sometimes I can taste the horrible gunpowders that are being dug out of bunkers to shoot on ranges right now, you know. So it puts me present, and it allows that part of the brain that's much better at recording this to play it.
Cool. Well, thank you. I totally expected this to be awesome sauce, and it is. Okay, I have a couple more things here. Okay, so in the book, if anybody has this book, on page 36, there is 3/4 of the way down, it talks about letting it happen and not making it happen. And then it says, it is not trying hard. So, can you talk about this concept of people who are trying harder? Because I see this on the line all the time. And they just think if they try harder, that they'll do better. And that's not the case, right?
That's right. So this is an interesting way to look at it. It comes from self-image, something we don't talk about. You have to know who you are. You can't be guessing at it. And you know, everybody who's taken my class has heard me do this little spiel, but it's not for them. It's always for me. And I use an acronym which is ACED, and I say I'm accurate, consistent, efficient, and disciplined. I understand the context of the situation, allowing me to perform at my current level of skill earned through practice. Which means nobody can talk anything to me ever in my life and change me. And it's very interesting. The number one predictor of skill has always been confidence. So there's an old book. It's written in 1966, and it was a rifle book, Lauterbach and somebody else that I can't remember. But they said the number one predictor of outcome was the confidence they had in their firing, whether they felt confident or not.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're trying to encourage in self-image, is true self-confidence. I have a
Not fake
diatribe against,
confidence.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You know, it's even worse when you tell me you're not any good at stuff.
Yeah.
We've all heard that speech in my class. If you come in and you hide who you are, you started a relationship with a lie. If I ask you, you're a good shooter, and you say, I guess so, or I'm not, and then I see that you are, I already know I have a problem. And you have a self-image problem. So, you know, if I step forward in class and somebody said, are you a good shooter? The answer would just be yes. They didn't ask me if I'm the greatest shooter in the world. They asked me if I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
So the self-image can reply to that. The self-image has to have a sacrifice of ego to overcome the plateau. So you have to let go of what you believe to be effective and do something efficient or less than your self-image or ego believes to be necessary. So that's
Whoa,
the
whoa,
answer
whoa.
to your
Say that
question.
again, Brian. Say
Yeah,
that
I
again.
know. I know. So let's go through this. You have to sacrifice ego to overcome plateaus. There's no other way around it. That's why you get angry before you make progress. You have,
Oh.
and I look forward to people getting upset
Yeah, I
because I
got
know
mad
that they're
one time
getting
and
up.
you were happy about it, and I couldn't
Yes,
figure out why.
because I'm a
Okay.
psycho. But that's when you're going to change. You're
Yeah,
tired of what? The same old status quo. It's no
right.
longer enough for you. So you're either going to change your shape or you're going to quit. Those are the only two choices you've left to yourself. That's why you're angry. All right. And knowing you're not going to quit. So you got a little angry, and I'm very happy because now the ego is on the chopping table. And we're going to try to let go of what we know or believe to be effective. And that's the biggest stumbling block in learning. And mostly it comes from movies.
Mm.
Almost everybody is being affected. And then it is platitudes, silly sayings that we have that have a kernel of truth, but are not contextually relative all the time. And we believe those to be important. And as long as the group is constantly saying these things, it can keep all of us at mediocrity. Ooh, there's one
Whoa.
of my nastyisms. Yep. So if you let go of what you think to be effective and do something efficient or less than yourself or your ego believes to be necessary, that's where you grow. Didn't expect all that, did you?
No,
That's a
I just
tough one.
think I think that we need just a minute to soak that in.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you don't need to say anything. There
Mm-hmm.
needs to be a soak-in moment.
Well, people
Whew.
don't believe learning to be that. They believe it to be a repetition until suddenly the thing comes. And that's not how it works. All of you need to hear this. You're more than enough already. You can grow into any shape you want to be. We have neuroplasticity and mirror neurons for a reason. But you believe yourself to be fixed, and therefore you can limit your exposure to progress by believing something to be effective that's not, which is cognitive dissonance,
Mhm.
which was the beginning of this discussion, that you can believe two separate things even though you know one to be true and the other one not. And that's what holds us back in training. And shooting is a relatively simple physical skill. It is complex because of the time compression factors and the relative pattern recognition that has to be done in tenths of seconds. So we can't be talking to ourselves while we're doing it.
I know. Yeah, to truly do it correctly, you
Mhm.
can't. But it's hard to shut that off. So
Don't
speaking
shut
of
it off. Just let it be. Just
right,
don't
just
listen
don't give
anymore.
it any power is
Yep.
what you're saying. You
Yep.
don't give it
Yep.
power. Yeah, that's
But
I
you give
think you're
yourself
right.
something to do. You got to have something to do.
Change your
So call your
focus.
dot.
Yeah.
See your dot, call your shot, and feel what's going on. And that's the only thing that's important. So I could care less about the outcome. I always want to do well. Uh, Adam can relate to this. You stand in front of 20 people and you've given a demonstration a million times. There's still skin in the game, and you can screw
Yes.
this up. So I look forward to screwing it up now so that I can show them how you handle failure and a problem in front of a group of people while I'm under pressure. So what
Yeah.
I simply do is I say, all right, I didn't do as well as I wanted to. Here's what I'm going to change. Here's what was lacking in my prep. Watch how I do this. And then I shoot the drill again. If I
Mm.
affect a change, I say, good for me. That was enough. If I don't, I say, listen, my programming wasn't right. I'm missing something here. What did you guys see? And then they'll feed me the answer. And then I shoot it again and then everything's fine. So the real example in all this is what? The inner turmoil that we all go through and learning to find a clear goal so we can get present. That's it. If you can do that, that's what lets the voices go away and it allows you to trust yourself at a high level.
Well, that's true teaching too. I mean,
Yep.
demoing is, yeah, you want to demo at a high level, but if you're being honest about what's really going on, because we're all human, then that's a
Mhm.
teaching moment.
Yep.
Yeah,
And if I'm not pushing, I'm never going to make a mistake.
right,
So what am I telling everybody? Be safe,
right.
and there's no safety in the world. There's only strength through struggle. I think I heard that at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, that's my line.
Go ahead,
Did you have
Adam.
a question, Adam? Otherwise, I was going to move on to the next one.
Yeah, Brian, what you just said kind of went back to the very beginning where we were talking about emotionless correction. Something that it
Yeah.
really cemented when I first met you and you first started talking about that. I'd heard of it before, but it hadn't cemented until you spent some time on it, literally over the years that I've gotten to know you. Here's the example, and maybe you can pull a lesson from this better for us. Is yesterday I had the honor, the blessing to be around the world's greatest shooter, lady shooter in the world. And I got to watch her shoot, compete, and got to see what happened. In one of those stages of shooting, I watched her literally mess it up to a massive penalty that cost her from first place down to really about third place. It was in the middle of the string of the fire. And I sat there and watched because I was curious what she was going to do as soon as I realized she had messed it up. And there was literally no outward physical expression of correction. She kept on going with what it was as if it had never happened. When she got done, she went back and got quiet by herself off in a corner. And I literally watched her relive it. You could almost see it coming out of her body, out of her mind as she relived it. So I think it goes back to what you talked about, using the senses of all the different senses to feel that. But it was so intriguing to watch the world's best shooter, lady shooter, that walks the face of the earth right now do that. And really it ties into everything you're just saying. And I'm curious, just on what little synopsis you've heard here, what lessons could you pull from that?
So a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, wants to change emotionless correction to compassionate correction. And I don't think there's anything wrong in that. But what we're talking about as a corrective instrument is not self-talk. We're talking about the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing what you saw or feeling what you felt, if they're not present, the truth is you weren't there. And the only truth correction in that moment is I need to see more, I need to feel more. Uh, and that will put you present. So the emotionless correction is just cutting off a pathway we don't need. And mostly what we see with adults is temper tantrums where they get upset, and they put on a show for everybody else. Oh, I can't believe I missed that, or they come with the excuse. And what we need to do is short circuit that, because we're not in the immediate feedback loop if we go to that. We're in the emotional cortex of training. And what
Mm-hmm.
we want is immediate feedback. And I've got to figure out what I missed, because no matter how good you're at this, you're going to do this. You have cyclic concentration of 5 to 15 seconds. So somewhere during a stage of 30 to 45 seconds, there has to be a time where the human being drops out. And for some of us, the moment you drop out is the moment we look forward to, because there's where the improvement will be. If I'm just shooting well, what do I go back and work on? And if I can see the truth for what it is without getting upset, then I can improve in the moment. And the truth should just sound like what it was. And we've all been hit by it. Somebody says something to you, and you're like, wow. They don't dress it up. They don't dress it down.
Mm-hmm.
They just say, listen, my coach said this to me once, and he said, you don't respect me. I said, sir, I respect you more than anybody in the world. He goes, I'm here 5 minutes early. You get here on time and you're not ready. So my time means nothing and your time means more than mine. He wasn't angry. He said in that quiet coaching voice, and then he let me stew. As Laura will attest, and Adam, I'm never late for anything again, because that was a moment of a profound truth that I was selfish. I wasn't being ready. And he was also teaching me to be a better fighter, because I also wasn't ready when I stepped in the ring. I was always a little late. I had to get hit. I had to fail a little bit. And I've never allowed that. So I think the truth is the truth, and you correct immediately, and you don't avoid it, and you don't say anything about it. You just go where it is. It's not really stoicism. I don't know about you guys, but I'm a passionate mess inside my body. I am
I'm
nothing
a
but
passionate
feelings.
mess outside my body.
Yeah. I'm ready to go all the time, and I want to
Yeah.
do well. I want people to, and I love things and I hate things. But when it comes to correction, none of that really matters, because that's not part of the brain I want engaged. I just want the part that can correct the outcome.
Yeah, that's where you can learn the most and grow the most.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about in the book too about this idea of positive thinking. Okay. So we know that negative thinking has, negative effects, which are obvious, but can positive thinking be a toxic attribute as well? They called in the book, they called it positive hypnotism.
Mm-hmm.
And they said it's a short-term gain.
So we did a lot of experimentation with neurolinguistic programming. Tony Robbins was big in my generation. And we self-talk ourselves into a positive methodology. I'm going to win. I'm going to win. But there's more to it than that. It's a very juvenile approach to it. If I just repeat the same thing over and over and say it. So we have 3 negative thoughts or if we have one negative thought, it takes 3 positive thoughts to turn it around, following the rule of 3. So we're inversely more negative because that's survival. We don't want to make the same mistake more than once if we survive it. So it is a bit negative, but we also have to not tell ourselves it doesn't matter. We're
Mm-hmm.
beautiful and wonderful. The outcome doesn't matter, because it does matter to us. But the only way we can affect the outcome is by being process driven. So the self talk should always be situated towards process. Was I present for the process? Did I do the steps? Do I know the order of information? Was I accurate in my assessment that it was good enough? Did I do it in a timely fashion? As long as the self talk is positive in nature by that, it would be great. The other thing is try not to give yourself negative comments. Uh, if you tell yourself not to do something, you might as well just go do it, because all you've envisioned. So instead of the negative is, all right, I'm not going to go fast this time, what you're going to say is, I think I can let go a little bit more of the tension so I can be efficient. So it's a different way to talk to yourself, and it's not positive talk the way we kind of think about it. It's not geared towards the outcome. It's geared towards the process.
You make it sound so easy.
It is not. Please don't think so.
No, I
I'm
know
just
it's
trying to
not.
simplify it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
It's a struggle for all of us. It's a struggle for myself. And I heard Jordan Peterson talk about when he wrote his book that he was working at a level higher than he ever had before. And sometimes he goes back and reads it. As an instructor, I've been working on a clarification of what I believe to be important, and it's all very clear in my mind right now. And so the real goal is to simplify the process so it makes sense to everybody instead of using catchy terms and phrases.
Mhm.
And that's all I'm trying to do. That this is available to all of us. And if you look at any endeavor, you'll notice these things being present. This has nothing to do with shooting. Every effective, successful person or group does these things for a reason, and they have to
Mhm.
do these things.
Mhm.
And you will learn it through trial and error. So here's what I've come to believe that my role as an instructor is: it is to alleviate unnecessary suffering. I'm not saying you're not going to suffer, because facing yourself is hard, but I'm not going to make it harder than it should be by
Mhm.
allowing you to whip yourself, flog yourself, talk negatively, create
Mhm.
unrealistic goals, to do things without a time limit, to not measure yourself. I'm
Mhm.
going to make you suffer appropriately for what it is without adding to it. And you're going to do the same thing, because, as you pointed out, we don't want to avoid the struggle. Struggle is where strength lives. And that's what changes us. So that's why when people get geared up and they get passionate about it, I know they want to improve. What worries me is the person who doesn't care. Ah,
Mhm.
well, because I know they're hiding in that moment.
Mhm.
And you'll see those guys do really well in practice and then fail in a performance mode,
Mhm.
because that's a practice mode. So that's the difference between positive talk. I think you should be inherently compassionate to yourself. But let's be honest, what really is compassion? It's telling you the truth. Sympathy is telling you what you want to hear.
Mhm.
Compassion is the utter truth. And sometimes the truth is brutal,
Yeah.
you know?
Hey, just
I'm
a
not nearly
reminder,
as,
guys.
go ahead.
Sorry. I just want to remind you guys we are getting to the top of the hour here, so we are going to be doing Q&A here pretty quickly. So I just wanted to prime you up and let you know that, so you can be thinking of questions you want to ask Brian. If you have any, drop those in the comments and we'll be getting to those shortly. Okay, so I have one more question here before we go into Q&A, unless you've got something, Brian, that you definitely wanted to talk about. Well, I have more than one question, but uh, okay. I always have so many and then I can never get to all of them. So this came up twice today in different places in my life. And so this is why I feel like this needs to be talked about. And what I have in my notes is, where is your focus? And my question is, how important do you think focus is to performance? But can you also give us an example of how you have changed someone's focus in real time to immediately affect their performance?
All right. So we have to define what focus is. Is it visual focus? Peripheral vision's out here, panorama's right here, detailed focus is here. What's most important? What are we focusing upon? Uh, Psychologically, what would allow us to make timely decisions when we have a good enough solution? Physiologically, how do we handle the stress that's being dumped in our system? Well, breath would do it. Our focuses are of three: technical skill, psychological, and physiological. So that's where the focus problem comes in. What we have to clearly identify is where are we failing? That's where our focus has to be. Do I not understand the technical skills at this time, which is sometimes the real answer. I don't have enough grip, or I don't understand postural stability, or I'm not seeing the sights and trigger the way I should see and feel them. But then sometimes it's a psychological problem. Why do I continue to do the wrong thing even though I know I should do the other thing? So how do we mediate that? Well, we have to refine good enough. That's what psychological decisions are. Is this good enough for me to get through? So it's called the Ben Max theory. You have to minimize the potential bad outcomes and maximize your potential good outcomes. That's what it is, always is. And then physiologically, if you're not under stress, you're a psychopath. Something's broken inside of you. You don't perform very well, and you have no spike. So it means you're going to have impulse control actions. That's the other problem with that. Sounds really good until you know that if anybody can spike you, then you're going to do something erratic. So
Hmm.
those three things have to be present for a focus. And then we have to figure out, where am I failing? Is it technically? Is it in my thought process, or is it in how I'm managing what's going on with these incredibly abundant chemicals in my body? For most people, they're such visitors to their body. It's the third one. So a great way I do this, and you've seen me and do this, I'll raise or lower my tone according to the person, and I'll change the input. What did you see? What did you feel? And it looks like magic because the brain is set up to do this. I
Hmm.
don't need to answer questions. I have to ask you the right questions so you can supply the answer, therefore making you interdependent upon the world, not codependent or dependent, but interdependent, so that you can take this information in. I've written you a small paragraph to end this show about how to put all this together, because the
You
problem
did?
is yeah, it's important,
Oh,
right? Can't preach all
yes.
this stuff and follow it.
I love that. Thank you for doing that.
Well, this is hard,
Yeah.
and the better you are physically, the more you'll trap yourself with tension you don't need, or emotions you don't need. And the better you are mentally, the smarter and more creative you are, the more you'll make up stuff that you don't need to do. It's a trap in itself. And then the more technically you're related you are, the more likely you are to make a checklist that doesn't work
Hmm.
because there's too many steps involved. It doesn't follow the rule of three. And then that's what I see in the suffering of training and focus is, we focus on drills, we focus on events, we focus on external badges that tell us we did a good job. But ultimately, you have to look in the mirror every day and say, that was good enough. That's where the focus is. I've done a good enough job. I have a clear goal. I have passion, purpose. I'm seeking mastery. I'm curious. Uh, there's a rule of three in athletics that's very interesting. A third of your training should be utterly disheartening.
Oh, I've
You
heard
should
this
be
before.
yeah, you
Yeah.
should be miserable. And then a
Hmm.
third of it should be right on par, what you're good at. And a third of it should be really joyous. It should be awesome and exceptional. If a coach sees that you're balancing these three well, there's no inputs needed. But mostly, where do we live? In the sea of misery. We
Right.
just we can't do it. So look at your training, look at your focus, and if it doesn't reward you, which is autotelic behavior, why would you keep doing it? You're going to
Hmm.
quit. You're going to burn out. No matter how conscientious you are, you'll eventually say, I can't do this anymore. It's just not worth it. And you won't say it loudly. You'll just notice one day you stopped, or you're not here anymore
Hmm.
to do it. And
Hmm.
that's the big burnout problem with people that listen to shows like this, is they're going to try harder, and
Right.
therefore they're going to hasten the end instead of actually enjoying the journey
Hmm.
and getting the rewards that they're passing by as quick as they can, trying to get to the goal. I think I worked that right back around at the beginning.
You did. That was awesome. Is there anything else before we get into Q&A? We have 3 questions so far. Hopefully, Adam, I didn't miss any of them. Will you go through those one more time, Adam, and just make sure I didn't miss any? Are there any well, we'll do this after the Q&A. Was there anything else you wanted to say before we go into that, Brian?
Yeah, let's finish. This is pretty short. I
Okay.
just want everybody to kind of listen to this. Automaticity is to be avoided in decisions, but encouraged in techniques and tactics. If we visually frame or narrow triggers of flow, they help prevent fight or flight during our performance. Um, Discombobulation is often mistaken for stress, where we don't know the order of events. Welcome stress is the gate of struggle to open the flow.
Mm.
Chunk elements into certainty, organize groups of movement for control. The smaller goals are put together in chunks for a good dopamine response, which is the way your brain rewards you. The brain is an answering machine. Ask the right performance questions. Focus is about controlling spontaneity, top down control. Clear goals create forward motion, which calms you down. A correct action plan silences the critic. Creativity is spontaneity with a purpose. Creativity emerges as you perform. Freeze is a pause in the fight of forward movement. Life is a maze, not a marathon. So a step sideways is still a step forward. Gratitude inspires forward action instead of basking in the feeling. Emotions are contagious, whether they be calm or panic. That's
You need to write a
distilling
book,
of,
Brian.
yeah, that's the distilling. But you know what? I am writing a book. I'm
You
writing it
are?
with all of you. Every one of you that I touch, you have the living book, and then it
Oh,
can't be misrepresented. It becomes the life's work of the coach is to write living books. So maybe I'll write a book eventually. I got enough notes, Lord knows.
yeah, you've got quotables for days, man.
But that's how the truth is, right? It just is
Right.
the truth,
When you
you
hear
know?
the truth, it resonates. When we hear
Mhm.
the truth, we know it. Yeah. Okay,
And I
so
never
let's
had
see.
this. I never had this from my coach, until much later in life. And then I could appreciate it. The early coaches were horrible, you know? They were doing the best they could with no information. So,
Well, we're really glad that you've decided to help us because it's so valuable. Like I can't even put it into words. It's unbelievably helpful, I'm sure, to many. So we appreciate you being on here.
the honor
Okay,
is
let's
mine.
see. Um, which question should I do first? I'll just do them in order. How about that?
Okay.
Okay, so Daryl wants to know, how do I get myself to do the thing I know I need to do?
So clearly define it as good enough. Um, you know, so I don't know whether you're actually talking about while you're doing something or getting started. But so, like, if I wanted to practice and get better at things, some days it's 2 minutes of practice, some days it's 20 minutes of practice. I need to have a clear goal of what I'm trying to improve. I need to have a little practice schedule to do it. And then I need to do it with recency every 72 hours. The problem is we have to wade through the sewage to get to clean water. So we're going to have a really hard time at the beginning of any new practice getting good at it. And that's the struggle. And I offer you the struggle as your own so that when you get to the end, you'll have strength to pick it up and keep going up the hill. And that's the reward of this. If you procrastinate and you don't do what you're supposed to, you'll have a life of regrets. We always regret the struggles we avoid when we
Mm,
don't step up and do what we need to do. And I hear in that question, Daryl, a great question. So I encourage you to invest in yourself as you if you would in your loved ones. Because I know you love somebody in your life and there's nothing you wouldn't do for them. So why won't you do the same for yourself? Because they're counting on you. And once you make that statement, I'll do anything for you, you got to start taking care of yourself. Do what's necessary to be good enough. If you want to be a world championship shooter, you'll have to give up everything. But what does Daryl look like when he's good enough? That's what we clearly have to find. So find a way to motivate yourself into just good enough, no more, no less. And recognize every time you say to yourself, I didn't do what I'm supposed to, say, what can I do about it? Turn it into the question of action. And then find a way to do it. I hear so many people say, I don't have time. You don't
mhm.
have time not to improve yourself. You don't have time. You've made enough time and importance and money. When you spend money, you're spending your time. So spend the time wisely. Value yourself at a high level. Show some self love and advocacy so that you want to improve. And then know that 90 days of it is just hell. It's just hard to get started, and then momentum will start to carry you after that.
That's so good. Chris wants to know, Regarding gaining confidence, you make your positive phrase to tell yourself, you tell yourself that often. How long before you actually believe it?
Hey, Chris. So here's the hard part, right? You can tell yourself everything you want to do, but it has to be confirmed by action. The telling means nothing unless the action's there to back it up. So um, I'll say this live and embarrass Adam at the same time. But there's very few people in the world. One of the people I trust absolutely is Adam Lynch, not because of what he says, because I've watched him and his words meet his actions. So I know there's a good person inside of that. So when you tell yourself you got to do this, you got to do this, you have to meet the actions. Um, if we're talking purely about shooting goals, the first thing is to be safe. Are you safe with a gun? Then you have to say, all right, I can move on to the next thing. Can I hit the target? Yes. At what distance? What size target? You know, the target will tell you the truth. Once you get good at that, you have to say, I'm going to become more efficient. I'm going to get rid of all the things that don't matter that I think that matter. I'm going to refine and polish myself and get rid of the dross, boil it out of my soul until the perfect part of me is there. And then I'm going to step forward in every opportunity to perform at my highest level. And that's how we get to these things. We don't tell ourselves, we take the action that actually takes the words and say these mean things. Without action, the words mean nothing. We teach this in law all the time. We need words and actions. You need the same thing for performance. You must have the actions to validate it. And the problem is you may be doing the actions, but the goals aren't clear, or you're not feeding back the immediate feedback soon enough. So it interferes with that. And you tell yourself, I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll be good at it. But that's not how it works. You must be filled with self doubt to train, and you should relish the self doubt because we doubt that we're good enough yet and we never will be. And that's how we pursue a life of mastery. I will never be good enough at this, but if I get lucky, I get another day, another year, another decade, maybe 2 decades. At the outside of this, 4 decades. You know, if there's some medical breakthroughs, that's it. The clock is running. And Brian Hill is just starting to hit his true form of something valuable and something good. And I will not let anything stop me from my chosen path now that I know what my purpose is and I know how to be present for it. And I will help other people stop suffering. So don't tell yourself, be the thing you want to be. Take action. You're
Mm,
welcome. Thank you. Ooh, I got
that's,
goosebumps.
ooh, me too. I know.
Yeah, that wasn't me. That was the universe talking through me, I think.
Oh boy. I don't know who this is, but they're on Facebook and they wanted to know. They said today at dinner, Brian and I talked about how our brains hang on to negative versus the positive. I heard him mention that again here. Brian, how do we program our brains to release the negative?
You simply can't. We are negative by nature. It's a survival mechanism. So we don't release the negative. We just see it for what it is. You know, if you walk into a room and a jacket's hanging over a chair and you think it's somebody, you turn the lights on and you go, "Oh, it's just a jacket." That's what negative thoughts are. I'm no good. I'm incapable of doing this. Everybody's better than I am. I'll tell you the one negative thought that haunts me every morning when I wake up. It's the first thing my anxiety driven brain spews out. Nobody cares. That's
Mm,
what I hear. But you know what I say now? Nobody cares, but I do. So I
I love
start
that.
with me. I change the action. And that's how we change negative into more positive. My brain is full of negative things all the time. But that's not who I am. If you know me, that's I'm not a negative person. I just realized that the inclination is to be negative, to talk to ourselves. So once again, I can't get rid of those, but I change them into something. And I think the way I've changed that one, I'm pretty happy with it. No one cares, but I do. Uh,
I love
and then
that.
I'm eventually going to get up and say we all care. We all want to be better. And I think that's what I really see with people is everybody wants to be a little bit better than they were. And martial arts has always been a vehicle for self-refinement. If you don't know yourself, you can't achieve any victories. So the refinement is these very small windows of I'm facing something negative, then I can change that while I'm doing a very minute task that has very low risk involved in it right now. And if I do that over a period of time, it creates a habit. Habit creates character. Character creates a lifetime of work.
So much. There's so
Mm-hmm.
much, Brian.
I don't know how it all got in here.
It's a lot. It's wonderful. I love it. We need to
I'm
wrap up.
glad.
We're over the hour. I don't want to stop, but
Yes,
I do want to value your time.
I'm
And
here for you.
I want to ask you, are there any classes coming up that you want to tell people about?
Hey, so the book you used, I have blatantly stole and infringed their copyright. Now I have a class called the Inner Game of Shooting to address
Oh,
these concerns. So
yeah.
I love my deliberate coaching class, but there's only so many people coaching firearms, but there's a whole bunch of people in the world that want to shoot well and want to get over all this, and they don't care about coaching, even though their first client is themselves. So I created a 2-day course that's called the Inner Game of Coaching. And then I have the deliberate
You mean the
coaching
inner game of
class.
shooting, right?
Inner game of shooting. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. See what I
Yeah.
did right there? It really is the inner game of it. But it's an ode and an honorable to the inner game of tennis and golf because they really got me started on being adaptive. That's what the whole book is about. Quit teaching the way you've always taught and be adaptive. Trust your intuition to do these things. So I'm very excited to teach that. And of course, it's influencing all my other courses.
Yeah.
So my red dot has a portion of it, and that has it, and then so really excited about that. And you can find all this information at completecombatant.com. That's the completecombatant.com. Shelly's awesome. There it is on the bottom. Thank you. And there's a whole schedule and list of stuff I'm doing. So I'm on the road for about 20 weekends and then a couple at home, uh, maybe 10 or so. So I got about 30 classes coming up this year. Who knows what else will happen too. So
Busy, busy guy.
I love it.
That's awesome.
Love it.
Cool. Well, we're going to cut you loose tonight, Brian. Thank you for your time, for your wisdom. Uh, I really hope that you might come back, later in the year again. I want you to be a regular because you have a special place in my heart. You've helped me in so many ways, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with you in the future. So, um, just a really special guy, and I think you all can see his heart, and he's got so much wisdom and knowledge and experience, and really, really, truly cares about people, and that really shows through when people are that way. So thank you again for coming on, Brian, and I hope that you'll come back again sometime soon.
Listen, anytime for you. I don't know how more clearly to say that. If I'm
Well,
available, I'll
yeah.
do anything for you. All right.
Okay.
So, yep,
Okay.
I want
I
to
appreciate
support
it.
you. And I see you're going to take the mantle of a lot of things that nobody else has. And this is the beginning of it. And my job at my elder statesman's age is to be a part of your success and to facilitate you getting better at what you do. And if that means me sitting here and running my yap and pretending like I haven't made 12 billion mistakes on a daily basis, then that's what I'm here to do. So
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
you're one of my favorites. Don't tell the rest of them. I'll rate this podcast.
All right. Well, let's move on then and talk about who we're going to have on next week. So let's see here. Oh, next week we're going to have, is that right? Let me check the calendar. I just want to make sure. Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, next week is Ed Monk is going to be on from Last Resort Firearms Training. Ed is the co-owner and instructor at Last Resort Firearms Training in Whitehall, Arkansas, and he's been researching, providing training to schools, churches, and law enforcement on active shooter threats for over a decade. So that's what we're going to be talking about next week. Let's see. With experience as a police officer, school teacher, firearms trainer, and Army officer, Ed has a diverse background of expertise and experience to draw from, and we're looking forward to having him on next week. So, guys, the lineup just keeps piling up. We've got so many great people that have volunteered to come on to this live, and I just can't tell you how grateful I am for that. And again, if you find value in what we're doing here, please join the Defenders Live Facebook group or go to the YouTube channels for Defenders USA and Defenders Live. Subscribe, like, do all that cool stuff. And we'll plan on seeing you here next week with Ed Monk's Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Until then, take care.